Welcome to AI Breakdown. We cut through the AI noise with clear, jargon-free insight. Whether you're just beginning your AI journey and don't want to get too technical, or exploring its real-world impact, this space is made for you. I'm your host, Jin Hu, and with me are my AI co-host, Ben and Emily. Today, they will help review my latest article, break down key insights, and add their unique perspective. So, Ben and Emily, over to you.
Hey, Jane. Thanks for sending in this awesome topic about AI in the workplace. It's Ben here, and I'm joined by Emily, our AI expert, to kind of break this down for you.
Sure.
We're seeing more and more AI tools just popping up in our everyday work apps, but
Right.
what does it all mean, especially with these recent pricing changes from Google and Microsoft?
Yeah, it's definitely a fascinating time to be following this disinching. Instead of offering their AI features like Gemini and Copilot as optional add-ons, Google and Microsoft have bundled them into their core subscriptions.
Right.
Sure, the price went up slightly, but is this the start of what some are calling mandatory AI? What does that mean for you and your workflow?
Okay, so let's dive in.
Yeah.
One of the first things that stood out to me was just how hard it is to get a clear picture of how many people are actually using AI in their work.
Right. The data is all over the place. On the high end, you have some sources claiming that 92% of Fortune 500 companies are already using OpenAI technology.
Wow.
But this figure seems to come directly from Sam Altman, OpenAI's CEO. So, it's probably best to take it with a grain of salt.
Right. And then there was studies like the one from McKinsey, which found that 65% of their respondents regularly use generative AI, but they don't specify who those respondents are.
Right.
It's likely they mostly work with big corporations, so that number might not reflect what's happening in smaller businesses or other sectors.
Exactly. And to make things even murkier, you have Chambers of Commerce data that puts adoption rates somewhere between 20 and 40%.
Wow.
Which is a pretty wide range. And then you have data from the UK showing much lower adoption in public sectors like the NHS, with numbers around 10 to 17%. So it seems like AI adoption is happening,
Yeah.
but the exact rate is still a bit of a mystery.
So what's causing all this variation in the data? The article suggests that part of the problem is that there's no standard definition of what adoption actually means. Are we talking about companies just experimenting with AI or fully integrating it into their operations?
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
You get a general sense of the image,
Yeah.
but there are still a lot of gaps to fill in. And this problem isn't limited to overall AI adoption. When we look at market share data for AI workspace tools specifically,
Right.
it gets even more complicated.
Yeah, the article talks about how data sources like SimilarWeb are very consumer-focused and don't really capture how businesses are using these tools. And then you have others like First Page Sage, but their methodology isn't very transparent.
Exactly. So we have to rely on estimates and informed guesses. Based on what we do know, it looks like Microsoft with its Copilot tool might have a larger share of the market than Google with their Gemini platform. We're probably looking at something like 15 to 25% for Microsoft compared to 10 to 18% for Google.
Okay.
But again, those are very rough estimations.
So the bottom line is that there's a decent gap between Google and Microsoft in this space, even though both companies are really pushing to integrate AI into their workspaces.
Yeah.
But this brings up the $2 question. Why are both companies making these pricing changes now?
That's a great question, and the article dives into several possibilities. Did Google and Microsoft struggle to sell AI as a separate add-on? Maybe the adoption rate for those premium features wasn't what they were hoping for. It's possible that most businesses just weren't willing to pay a premium for AI on top of their existing subscriptions.
That makes sense. Or maybe it's about user experience. Let's be real.
Right.
AI tools can be frustrating to use.
Oh, yeah.
I've definitely had my fair share of struggles trying to get them to do what I want, and I'm sure you have too. Perhaps this is Google and Microsoft's way of encouraging people to use AI more by making it more accessible.
There's also the financial side to consider.
Right.
By bundling AI into the core subscription, both companies can guarantee a certain level of revenue from these features, whether people actually use them or not.
Right.
It creates a much more predictable and consistent revenue stream, which is always appealing from a business perspective.
So maybe this isn't about AI for everyone as much as it is about guaranteed AI revenue.
Right.
Maybe a little cynical, but definitely a valid consideration. The article also points out that we can't forget about ChatGPT,
Oh, yeah.
OpenAI's platform, which currently holds somewhere between 60 and 75% market share in the generative AI space.
This kind of dominance puts a ton of pressure on both Google and Microsoft to compete.
Yeah.
By bundling AI tools into their existing workspaces, they're trying to incentivize businesses to use their platforms instead of relying on ChatGPT. It's a way of keeping users within their ecosystems.
So it's not just about competing with each other. It's about this larger fight for dominance in the AI market. But this pricing change isn't happening in a vacuum. The article also mentions a few other factors that might be at play here, like the need to recoup their massive investments in AI development.
Right, both companies have poured enormous resources into building their AI capabilities, and they need to see a return on that investment.
Yeah.
But they're also facing pressure from new competitors that are emerging on the scene.
The article specifically mentions the Stargate project, which sounds pretty intriguing. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, the Stargate project involves some major players like OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle. Their goal is to create a network of AI supercomputers. Essentially, they're pooling resources to build even more powerful AI models and capabilities.
Wow, that sounds like it could be a game changer.
Yeah.
But the article also mentions that the project has a massive price tag, something like $500 billion. Where's all that funding going to come from?
Right.
And is it even realistic to build an AI network on that scale?
That's what makes it a bit of a wild card in all of this.
Right.
There are so many unknowns. The lack of publicly available details makes it tough to assess the project's true potential. They've made a bold announcement, but are they overpromising?
It's almost like they're trying to generate hype without giving us the concrete information to back it up. But even with all the uncertainty, it's clear that Stargate is putting pressure on Google to stay ahead of the curve. How is this impacting their strategies?
For Google, it's all about innovating faster. Google could find themselves falling behind quickly. They need to step up their game to stay competitive.
So Google is feeling the heat. What about Microsoft? How are they being affected?
Microsoft's situation is a bit more complicated because they're currently partnered with OpenAI, a key player in the Stargate project.
Right.
OpenAI's involvement with Stargate suggests a desire to diversify their partnerships.
So could this mean trouble for Microsoft in the long run?
Potentially. If OpenAI starts collaborating more with companies like Oracle, it could weaken Microsoft's influence over them. They need OpenAI to be successful, but that success might come at a cost.
It seems like a difficult balancing act for Microsoft. It all points back to this battle for supremacy in the AI world. Companies are jockeying for position, and the stakes are incredibly high. But what does this all mean for the average user? That's what I really want to unpack.
That's a great point. We've talked a lot about big picture, but the individual user is ultimately the one who will be most affected by these changes. And that's where things start to get a little concerning. One of the biggest concerns for individual users is data privacy. When AI is embedded in every tool we use, it raises questions about how our data is being collected, analyzed, and potentially used to train these AI models.
Right. And the article points out that Google is trying to reassure users by saying they don't use your data to train Gemini outside of your domain.
Which sounds comforting at first.
Right.
But what exactly does within your domain even mean? It's not very clear.
Yeah. It feels a bit like a gray area.
Yeah.
And even beyond the whole training issue, there's the question of metadata.
Right.
AI tools can collect a lot of information about how we work, what we create, and even our communication patterns. That's a lot of potentially sensitive information that could be vulnerable to leaks or misuse.
You're absolutely right. We also have to consider the compliance risks.
Yeah?
Many industries have strict regulations around data privacy. How will these new AI-powered workspaces fit into those regulations? It's still a bit of a Wild West situation.
It seems like we're all rushing to adopt these tools without fully grasping the long-term consequences for our data security. We're putting a lot of trust in these companies to handle our data responsibly, even though the rules are still being written.
And it's not just about trusting these specific companies. It's about the broader implications of AI being so deeply embedded in our workflows. What happens when AI starts making decisions about our work or starts influencing those decisions in ways we don't fully understand? And the article brings up another important point: forced adoption.
Exactly. With these new pricing models, you're essentially paying for AI whether you use it or not.
Right.
And as the article highlights, it's not exactly easy to opt out of these features.
Right. They mentioned that you can turn off Gemini and Copilot, but the process is anything but intuitive. It's almost like you're making it deliberately difficult to say no to AI.
Which brings us back to the issue of control and autonomy. Are we truly free to choose how we work, or are we being pushed towards a future where AI is unavoidable?
There's also the lack of transparency.
Oh, absolutely.
How much do we really know about how these AI models work, how they're being trained, and what data they're accessing?
That's a critical point. There's so much mystery surrounding these AI systems. This lack of transparency is unsettling when you consider the potential impact on our work, our privacy, and even our decision-making.
It feels like we're taking a lot on faith without really understanding how this technology works. And that can be a dangerous position to be in.
Yeah.
When we lack understanding, we're more susceptible to unintended consequences.
So we have data privacy concerns, forced adoption issues, a lack of transparency. Is there any hope, or are we all destined to become slaves to the AI overlords?
I wouldn't go that far, but I do think it's crucial to be aware of the potential downsides of this rapid AI integration. It's not all positive.
The article does mention this project called Stargate, which seems to offer a different approach. Can you tell us more about that?
Stargate is a wild card. It involves some powerful players: OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle.
That's an impressive group. That sounds like it could change everything.
It has the potential to, but there are also a lot of unknowns about this project. For one thing, the price tag is astronomical. $500 billion.
$500 billion. That's an incredible amount of money.
It is, and it raises questions about feasibility. Where is all that funding coming from? And even if they can secure the money, is it even possible to build an AI network of this scale?
It sounds a bit like a sci-fi fantasy right now.
It does, and with so few publicly available details, it's hard to gauge its true potential.
They've made a bold announcement, but haven't provided much concrete information.
But even with all the uncertainty surrounding the project, one thing is clear. Stargate is putting pressure on both Google and Microsoft.
How so? How are they being impacted by this?
For Google, it underscores the need to innovate faster. If Stargate succeeds in creating these next-generation AI models, Google could quickly find themselves falling behind.
So Google needs to up their game if they want to stay in the race. What about Microsoft? What's their situation?
Microsoft's situation is more complex. They are heavily invested in OpenAI, which, as we discussed, is one of the key players in Stargate. But OpenAI's involvement in Stargate suggests they want to diversify their partnerships.
Which could spell trouble for Microsoft.
It's possible. If OpenAI starts working more closely with other companies like Oracle, Microsoft's influence over them could weaken.
So Microsoft needs OpenAI to be successful. But OpenAI's success might end up costing Microsoft their dominance.
It's a delicate balancing act. And it all goes back to the larger battle for AI supremacy. Everyone's striving to be the leader in this space, and the stakes are incredibly high.
It's not just about technology anymore. It's about power, influence, and control over this rapidly evolving landscape.
Exactly. And as individual users, we're caught in the middle of this power struggle.
This has been a fascinating discussion, Emily. So where do we go from here? What does this mean for you? What's the biggest takeaway from all of this?
I think the key point is that this seemingly small price increase, just a couple of dollars a month, signals a much bigger shift toward widespread AI adoption. It's happening whether we're ready for it or not.
It's like this subtle but significant change that's happening right in front of us. We're being nudged or maybe even pushed toward a future where AI is deeply integrated into our work lives.
Exactly. And the implications are enormous. We're talking about potential changes to how we work, how we communicate, how we make decisions, even how we think.
Yeah, it can feel a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
I guess knowledge is power. The more we understand about what's happening, the better equipped we'll be to make informed choices about how we engage with this technology.
I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. To wrap things up, I want to leave you with a final question to think about. Are you comfortable with the idea of AI becoming an inescapable part of your workflow? What does that mean for your data, your autonomy, and your role in the workplace? These aren't easy questions, but they're ones we all need to be asking ourselves as we navigate this new landscape.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of AI in the workplace, and a huge thanks to Jing for suggesting this incredibly thought-provoking topic. Be sure to subscribe to AI Breakdown for more deep dives into the ever-evolving world of AI. We'll see you next time.